Tonight, the headlines are stark. Washington is pivoting away from old commitments, leaving Europe watching with concern. The foundations of the post-war order are shaking. Certainty is fading. The question is no longer if Europe should stand alone, but how, and how quickly. This isn't about anti-Americanism, it's about pro-Europeanism. Brussels knows a strong, independent Europe is a better partner for the US. A partner, not a protectorate. These are the urgent questions of our time. The journey to decouple is not a choice, but a necessity. The EU and US share the world's largest economic relationship, over $1.3 trillion in annual trade, millions of jobs, and trillions in investment. This interdependence has fueled prosperity and innovation, but it's not a partnership of equals. The EU is often forced to react to US policy shifts. Tariffs, sanctions, and the dominance of the dollar all leave Europe exposed. US economic decisions ripple through Europe, often without European input. This isn't just partnership, it's vulnerability. When Washington uses economic leverage, European firms are caught in the crossfire, forced to comply or risk losing access to the US market. The EU's foreign policy is constrained by economic exposure. Disagreeing with Washington can be costly. The umbilical cord that once nourished Europe can now act as a leash. Decoupling isn't about severing all ties, it's about rebalancing the relationship. Europe must reduce vulnerabilities and build resilience, strengthen its domestic market, diversify trade, and create independent financial infrastructure. The alternative, perpetual subordination to Washington's economic whims, is no longer viable. Europe must act to secure its own interests. The EU is the world's largest single market, yet its full potential remains untapped. For too long, growth has relied on exports, especially to the US and China. The first step to independence is turning this economic power inward, stimulating domestic demand. That means investing in green infrastructure, digitalization, and healthcare, creating jobs and modernizing the continent. Ensuring wages keep pace with productivity fuels a virtuous cycle of consumption and growth. Deepening the single market is key. Removing non-tariff barriers and harmonizing regulations can unlock billions in economic activity. Imagine a truly unified market where services and capital flow seamlessly across all member states. This requires political will, but the payoff is immense. Boosting domestic demand is about shifting from being the world's workshop to being its own best customer. It's not protectionism, it's building a stable foundation at home. A Europe less dependent on exports is less vulnerable to external shocks. This is the path to a self-sustaining, resilient economy. Europe must set its own course, confident in its internal strength. Strengthening the internal market is vital, but Europe must not turn its back on global trade. The goal isn't to trade less, but to trade more widely. Over-reliance on any single partner is a weakness. The EU must accelerate trade diversification, forging deeper ties with Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Finalizing deals with blocs like Mercosur and ASEAN, and prioritizing partnerships with India should be top priorities. These agreements must go beyond tariffs, covering services, investment, and regulatory standards to promote European values. Diversification also buffers against supply chain disruptions, as seen during the pandemic and recent geopolitical tensions. Building redundant, diverse supply chains ensures stability, even if it means higher short-term costs. The EU must speak with one voice, using its collective weight to negotiate and uphold a rules-based order. By weaving a web of strong, diverse trade relationships, Europe can dilute US influence and become a central node in a multipolar world. This is the price, and the promise, of economic sovereignty. Europe's future depends on it. True independence requires control over finance. The euro is strong, but Europe's capital markets are fragmented, forcing companies to seek US funding. Completing the capital markets union is urgent. Harmonize rules, mobilize savings, and channel investment into European innovation. A deep, integrated capital market would fuel growth and reduce dependence on American finance. Europe must also strengthen the euro's international role, especially in energy contracts and trade with new partners. Developing independent payment systems and financial infrastructure is essential to avoid US sanctions leverage. This project is complex and demands political will, but the strategic imperative is clear. A Europe that can finance its own ambitions is a Europe that stands on equal footing with the US. The Capital Markets Union is not just technical, it's geopolitical. It's the foundation for funding Europe's green transition, digital transformation, and security. Financial sovereignty is the backbone of strategic autonomy. Europe must build its own financial fortress. The war in Ukraine exposed Europe's defense gaps and reliance on US military power. With US support uncertain, the EU must step up, either fill the gap or risk security collapse. Europe has the resources, the challenge is political will and coordination. The EU should lead in funding Ukraine's defense, using joint financing or even profits from frozen Russian assets. Beyond Ukraine, Europe must rethink security, meeting and exceeding NATO spending targets, investing in modern capabilities like cyber, drones, and AI. Defense spending must be coordinated. Joint procurement and interoperability are essential. The goal move from fragmented national forces to a more integrated European defense posture. This doesn't mean a single EU army overnight, but building the capacity to act together decisively. The cost of credible defense is high, but the cost of insecurity is higher. Europe must act now to secure its own future. The time for half measures is over. Europe's security must be in European hands. The stakes could not be clearer. Europe's defense still depends on American technology, limiting its autonomy. To be truly sovereign, Europe must build its own defense industrial base, innovative, integrated, and independent. Collaborative projects like the Future Combat Air System show the way forward. The EU must identify capability gaps and launch pan-European projects in areas like drones, satellites, and strategic airlift. Breaking down national protectionism is crucial. Cross-border mergers and partnerships can create true European defense giants. A Buy European Act for defense procurement would guarantee a market for these projects. The transition will take years and political resolve, but the payoff is strategic autonomy. A robust domestic defense industry creates jobs, drives innovation, and ensures Europe can act without foreign constraint. Europe must move from being America's customer to its own master builder. The time to invest in European defense is now. Sovereignty starts at home. Sovereignty today is also digital. Europe's public discourse is shaped by American-owned platforms, Facebook, X, Google, TikTok. This digital dependency threatens democracy, making Europe vulnerable to disinformation and foreign influence. Europe has led in regulating big tech, but enforcement must be stronger. Fines for non-compliance must outweigh profits. The EU should demand algorithmic transparency and accountability. Beyond regulation, Europe must foster its own digital ecosystem, investing in alternative platforms, AI, cloud, and cybersecurity. Projects like Gaia X are vital for building digital spaces governed by European laws and values. A populace whose information is controlled by foreign entities cannot be truly sovereign. By setting clear rules, enforcing them, and cultivating a domestic digital sphere, Europe can protect its public square. The great debates about Europe's future must happen on platforms accountable to Europeans. Digital sovereignty is as crucial as physical security. Europe must reclaim its information space. The last piece is internal reform. The EU's decision-making, often paralyzed by the need for unanimity, is outdated. To act decisively, Europe must move to qualified majority voting on foreign and security policy. This reform is essential for rapid, unified responses to crises and to prevent external powers from dividing the Union. Overcoming resistance from smaller states will require courage and guarantees, but the continent's security depends on it. Strategic autonomy isn't about erasing national identities, it's about pooling sovereignty to strengthen all. The steps are clear: build a resilient economy, diversify trade, create a true capital market, fund credible defense, foster a domestic arms industry, secure the digital domain, and reform decision-making. The path is long, with setbacks and disagreements, but the destination is a strong, sovereign, united Europe. A Europe that shapes its own destiny, a partner to the world, not a dependent. The stakes have never been higher. The opportunity has never been greater. The future of Europe is in its own hands. This is the story of our time. Europe must seize it.